Welcome to a new chapter, AP Statistics. We're going to start with an introduction to the concept of simulation. I'm going to give you a moment. Go ahead and read through this scenario, and then I will talk you through it. So there's a couple of key things I want to point out. The first one being that when this problem talks about the student choosing the correct book, and this simulation is that student 1 would get book number 1, student number 2 would get book number 2, and so on. So what's the probability of this happening? So while we're not actually going to do this simulation, what I wanted to point out to you is what a simulation does and how it's best used. The one thing I do really like in this problem is that we're going to take everyone's results and compare them. So when we share your results with the class and we take everybody's results and we compile everybody's results, then we start getting into an average. So what you're going to see is repetition. We do a simulation, we do it again, we do it again, and we do it again. And we don't just simulate something one time and then make conclusions from that. We do several simulations, compile them all together, and that's what gives us our probability and statistics we can actually use to create conclusions. The final thing I'd like to point out about this scenario is this is what's called a simulation. We actually didn't take the 4 books and the 4 students and mix them up and then ask them to open them up and try to figure out who was who. That would have taken a lot of time and been very inconvenient. Instead, we simulated the same process with these 4 papers and randomizing them by mixing them up. So this is what we call a simulation. It's a way to create the same randomness without actually having to do the process. Let's get into some basics of probability. The first is the law of large numbers. And while it might seem quite foreboding, it's actually a very simple concept. It simply means as a sample size grows, its mean gets closer to the average of the whole population. So there's 2 things a sample size can imply. It could either imply multiple simulations. So the more and more simulations we do, the closer we're going to get to the true average. It could also mean the more samples we take from the population. So for example, a survey, the more people we ask their opinion about something, the closer we're going to get to the opinion of a whole population. So there's kind of 2 ways that the law of large numbers can play into it. We're going to mainly look at simulations right now, and we'll talk about other ways later on. But if you remember at the beginning of the year, we talked about sampling our population, doing surveys, things like that. That would also apply here. The next one is very important. It's how you actually interpret a probability. So a probability being like the chance of rolling a 5 on a die, things like that. How do we actually word that in AP statistics? A probability of an event is always expressed by a number between 0 and 1. The closer we are to 1, the more likely that event would occur, and the closer to 0, the less likely it's going to occur. We do use notation for probabilities, so we would say the probability of event A equals 0.5. That's just an example. A does not always equal 0.5, but all that means is that event A has a 50-50 chance of occurring, so an even probability, just as likely to happen as not to happen. Hopefully some bells and whistles are going off for you, because we finished earlier in the year a whole chapter on normal distribution, on density curves, which also had a proportion between 0 and 1. And if you remember, a lot of you asked me on our table A, why does it say probability and not proportion? Aha, there we go. Here's the tie-in. We're going to start talking about it as probability and not proportions or percents. So there's a huge tie-in between what we did with normal distribution and density curves and what we're going to be doing with probability. So interpreting a probability, so the probability of getting a sum of 7 when rolling 2 dice is 1/6. Interpret this value. We would expect in 6 rolls of 2 die to get a sum of 7 one time. So this is an expected value. But will that always happen? And of course not. If I rolled 2 dice 6 times, I may never get a 7, or I might get a 7 3 times. We don't know. But that's where the law of large numbers comes in, is as that sample size grows. So the more and more times I do this, the more and more times I roll those 2 dice over time, I would expect in 6 rolls to get a sum of 7 one time. It's important to stress that probability is what we expect to happen over time. It is not what will happen. So some issues we have with data. First off, something called streakiness data, when the same outcome occurs repeatedly, even when we know the probability. So for example, when you toss a fair coin, so not a loaded coin or a trick coin, and we keep coming up with tails, maybe 10 or more times in a row. What this creates are some myths about randomness, and this is where people sometimes get in trouble when gambling with their money. So the myths occur when a streak happens. People tend to think that the other possible outcomes are more likely to happen. So, for example, in our previous one about 10 tails, you might think that a head is now due. That term comes up. Oh, we're due to toss a head now. And that is absolutely completely false. That there's the head and tail is no more likely. It's still fair. It's still a 50-50 probability. We're not due. It's that misconception that streakiness will change the probability of the next outcomes. Let's talk about simulation and the process of creating simulations for probabilities. By using models, we can make conclusions about the probabilities of real-life events. It's often inconvenient, impossible, or perhaps unethical to actually do an event over and over repeatedly to discover its probability. So there are times when we can use other simulations to get the same effect of a random event. There are 4 steps. So whenever your textbook has a problem and it talks about the 4 steps, it says 4 step next to the problem. This is the process they want you to go through. The first step is to state. We want to ask a question of interest in context. What are you actually doing? Don't simply say, I'm trying to roll a die to find the probability of rolling a 12. That's not what we're doing. Why are you rolling that die? What are you trying to simulate? Oh, you're trying to simulate some other event occurring. Step 2 is to plan. We want to clearly describe how to use a simulation device to imitate the repetition of the process. In other words, you want to say it clearly enough so that somebody else can read your directions and do the exact same simulation. This is really, this second part is the part I see students try to take shortcuts on, and you will not get this part correct if you don't give a clear explanation. Third step is to actually do the simulation, perform the simulation repeatedly, and record the results. Finally, the fourth step is to conclude. You're actually going to use the results from your simulation to answer whatever the stated question was. So, of course, let's look at an example of exactly what all of this means.
Take a moment to read through this example, and then we're going to do our 4-step state plan, do it, and conclude. I picked this example in particular because it is a little bit tricky. It's not just your standard question. This is asking to kind of predict what you might need in the future. So here's our statement. This is what we're actually looking for. So this question is asking us how many batteries are we going to have to pull off of this assembly line to end up with 10 working ones. And this is knowing that only 10% of the batteries are even going to going to not work. We're going to have a problem with those. So what we're asking is, okay, if it's truly random and I'm just pulling them off the line, how many do I need to get off the line so that I got 10 that are working? This means I'm going to have a bunch of batteries that don't work. So kind of think that through. So it might be 13 batteries, might be 14 batteries, because a certain percent of them may not work. How are we going to do this? So if you've noticed, they've given us this trial. So we've got these random number lists, and we're familiar with those from chapter 4 when we first started, that we know how to use these random number tables. So we've got we're going to do 3 trials here. We're going to make a plan. Since 10% of my batteries are not going to work, then I'm going to assign just a single digit, and I'm going to allow one of those digits to represent a defective battery. So here's how I've set this up. Assign 0 to 9 to represent each sampled battery. Let 0 represent a defective battery. Using a random number table, select single digits from left to right until you have 10 working batteries. So let's do this with trial number 1, and you'll see. So we're actually going to do, and we're going to record our results. So I'm going to let this a dash equal a good battery. Okay, and an X will represent a bad battery. So I'll just write that down so you can see what I did. So here's what I'm talking about, is that's one good battery, that's a bad battery. Anytime I see a 0, that's going to be a bad battery. So I've got 4 good batteries so far. Oh, there's a bad one. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so this one took 12 batteries total. So remember, the question is, how many batteries is it going to take so that I can assure I get 10 working batteries? In trial number 2, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got 10 batteries that I needed to get from this one, and all 10 of them were working. All right, so trial number 3. Oops, I got a bad battery right off the bat. Here we go. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, bad battery. 8, 9. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I lied. That's only 8. This is 9, 10. So it's going to take, in this case, 13 batteries. And there is my simulation. So if I just went with these 3 trials, I might want to do a few more, but if I just went with these 3 trials, I would need at least 13 batteries to make sure I would always get 10 batteries. I'm going to conclude with, based on our simulations, we would need to take a sample of at least 13 batteries to assure 10 working batteries. Now, you have to realize that we are under the assumption that these batteries are randomly distributed between good working batteries and defective batteries. If that's not the case, if we have a machine that just breaks and just spews out bad batteries 10% of the time, then all of our bad batteries would be clumped together. So there has to be an assumption of randomization for this simulation to work.